Butts interviewing Ruth Stanley on July the 7th, 1995. Miss Stanley, could you please tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Fulton County, May the 6th, 1925.
What was it like when you grew up?
I was the youngest of 6 children, and I grew up in a union home. My father worked for Atlanta Joint Terminal Railroad, and he was a union member, and I had 2 brothers later on that went to work for the Atlanta Joint Terminal Railroad, and they were both union members. I had 2 sisters that worked for the telephone company, and they were both union members of CWA. And so I just, it's always been very, very important in our family that you be a union member and you participate in the union in which you belong. So I grew up with this all the way.
So you always just assumed that you would be a member of a union?
That's right. I just always assumed that I would be a member of a union. It was just normal for us. And that whatever our union was involved in, that we would be involved in it too.
How did you come to be involved with the sheet metal workers?
In 1956, in August of 1956, I went to work for the sheet metal workers in the apprenticeship office. At that time, I had 3 young children. And before then, I had worked in different local unions for relief for people that was out on sick leave or people that had vacations time or something like that. And I had worked around for most of the local unions at different times, a week now, something like that. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, because as much as everybody thinks they're all just alike, they're not. And so then I went to work. I took a 3-day-a-week job and working in the apprenticeship office. And I worked there about a year and a half, and they made it a full-time job. So then I stayed in the sheet metal apprenticeship office for 13 years. And then I left the apprenticeship office and went in the local union office then. And then I stayed in the local union office until I retired January 1 of 1989. And I had 32 and a half years with the sheet metal workers.
And all this time were you in OPEIU also?
Yes. I joined OPEIU in 1954 when I started working in local unions. I had a sister that worked for the laundry workers, Local 218. And she had called me and asked me, somebody, it was the IBEW Local 84, needed somebody to come in and work a week. And she said, would you be interested in doing it, but you will have to join the union before you go to work in there. And I said, yeah, let me see if I can get a babysitter. So I did, and I went to work in there. That was the first local union office I ever worked in.
What other ones did you work in during that period?
I worked for the IBEW Local 84, IBEW Local 613. I worked in the Teamsters office 728, which at that time we were on Washington Street in an old school building, where now it would probably be where the juvenile home is there on Washington Street. And so I worked in the carpenter's office, 225. I worked for the printing pressman's local, which was next door. I think it was 527. And I worked for the iron workers local, 387. And I don't remember any other locals, but like I said, I worked relief, worked vacations, or if somebody was out sick, I'd go in and work a week or 2.
This is right about the time of that Southwest CWA strike, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes, I remember the CWA. Now, none of the CWA locals was in what we call the Labor Temple at that time. And they were all scattered about in different buildings. And I mostly worked 54 and 55 in the buildings that was in the labor movement there. Oh, and I worked some extra in Typographical Local 48. That was another local union that was in that building.
And so by the time that you came to the sheet metal workers, everyone knew you, right?
I pretty well knew everybody that was active in the labor movement in that part, yes, then. And so then when I went to work for the sheet metal workers, I stayed there until January 1 of 89, and I retired at that time.
How were they feeling about it in the South? What was the general feeling about unions at the time?
It was not popular. It was laughed at, some of them, mocked some of them. The only publicity we ever got in the newspapers was bad. We were you just didn't go to your church and say, I'm a union member and I belong to such and such local union. We were just not looked on, we're more like gangsters or mobsters or things that we done. We got credit for a lot of things that we never done, anything, the bad things. The good things, management usually got the credit for. And but I have seen that change now and have where we get more favorable publicity and than we have ever gotten before.
Why do you think that there's more favorable publicity now?
I think that the general public now is more aware that unions are not what they thought they were, and that they are something that is good, and that something that helps the masses of the people. And the average middle class people need them very badly. And it used to be that, the general thinking on it was that, only the lower class people need unions. They're the only ones that can't hold a job unless somebody else holds it for them, which is not true. And which they've never been given a chance. And that's the bad part of all of it.
When you joined the OPEIU, how long did it take you to become an activist in the union?
I was elected secretary of the local union I cannot remember whether it was 56 or 57. And since that time, I have always held an office. Trustee or treasurer, secretary. Then we combined the offices of secretary, treasurer. At that time, they were not combined. And then vice president. But I served as secretary for a number of years. And
what were your responsibilities?
At that time, the secretary received all the dues, posted the dues, deposited the money in the bank, gave financial reports at each local union meeting, kept up with the mailing list, sometimes served on the negotiating committee, really just general duties there. Did the international report, saw that they were sent in on time, seen that the per capita tax was paid and all expense was verified, that it was legitimate and it was all paid, and really just, general duties for secretary treasurers.
And then weren't you president for a while of the OPEIU?
I served 17 terms.
17
terms
oh,
as
yes, you were a while.
president of Local 21.
Where did you get most of your members from?
Other local unions.
Yeah.
That's where most of our members come from, was other local unions. A lot of district offices that was established and is here in Atlanta. But normally that's where all of our members come from.
Well, I imagine that made negotiations a little easier.
No,
No.
harder.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Why?
Because most officers of local unions felt like that their office staff did not need a union. They were the best bosses in the world. And that they did not need a union or any representation. And this is not so. And so it made it, and a lot of the people, mostly women, that worked in these positions as office managers and secretaries and all, felt like they became the right hand of the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, well, he'll always be fair with me, you know, and I really don't need anybody to represent me.
Mm-hmm.
And, but they saw differently that they did. Everybody needs to be a union member, and everybody needs representation. And so, but that's where our membership comes from.
Did you ever have to go on strike?
Yes.
Is that right?
And the only strike that I remember, and I was not president at that time. I was secretary treasurer of the local union. Was against the CWA local, and it was a one-girl office, and we stayed on strike for almost 3 months.
Wow. What were her demands?
Our demands was very, very small. Before negotiations started, I think the officers had made up their mind that they wanted to get rid of her. And they weren't going to give anything, and they were going to cut wages. And so we ended up with like to end the strike, which eventually it involved the whole labor movement. And that was not good either, because we got an awful lot of bad publicity about it. And that we were not looking for this and all, and we felt like we were forced to do this.
Well, why did it involve the whole labor movement?
It eventually got to that because they started calling the president on the OPEIU and saying, look, you know, you're giving labor a black eye here. And, you know, we said, you know, call CWA and tell them they are. And but the demands was very, very reasonable. And but we finally won it. The girl went back to work, and she worked in there about 6 months and left.
But it was the principal.
It was the principal and not the other. But she could not believe, because she had been working in there about 7 years, she could not believe that they actually wanted to get rid of her. And but they did. And so it just really came down to a principle.
What year was this?
It was in the early 60s, because like I said, I was secretary of the local end. And we hadn't combined the offices or anything. I don't remember exactly. But the office was located on Ivy Street, right above the Southern Bell building. And right downtown. And it lasted so long, we had to hire pickets. And we paid them the minimum wage to walk the picket line there in front of the office. And because we all, worked full-time jobs, and it was just, then we'd, take some of our time, vacation time or something else, and go down and relieve like 2 o'clock and work till, walk the picket line till 5, and
Did you get people crossing the line?
yes, the officers of that local union crossed the line. Their pictures was in the paper.
I'm going to go look it up and see. Well, while we're back in the 50s and 60s, do you remember when the AFL-CIO merged?
Yes.
What did you think about that?
I was very much in favor of it.
Never.
At that time, let's see, one office was on Merritt's Avenue. The CIO office was on Merritt's Avenue, I believe. And the AFL office, I don't remember right offhand, but I just remember the CIO office being there on Merritt's Avenue. But I was very much in favor of the merger.
Well, now back at the sheet metal workers.
Mm-hmm.
You ran the apprenticeship program for them, yes? Tell me about it. Why did they have an apprenticeship program, first of all?
To be a good sheet metal worker, you must be a very well-trained craftsman. And they had started the apprenticeship program up before then, and it had just kind of fluted out. And there was really no backing from the contractors on this. So they had negotiated a 2 cents an hour for each hour that the sheet metal worker worked to go into an apprenticeship fund. Now this came along after I got there, because when I got there, when I went to work there in 56, we went to the local union when we needed funds and asked them, and they would donate $500, and then the Contractors Association would donate $500, matching funds, and I would pay the bills out of that. I was the only only person that drew a salary. The apprenticeship committee consisted of 3 men that was elected from the local union and 3 contractors from the Contractors Association, and that made the apprenticeship committee. This committee brought about a very good understanding of what the contractor needed and what the local union wanted to produce, which was a first-class journeyman sheet metal worker. And I'm very, very proud of the role that I played in this, because I feel like that sometimes if I hadn't used real good judgment, that I could have divided management and labor instead of bringing it together closer. And so then the first contract after I went to work there in 56, they negotiated the 2 cents an hour fund. So each time then that the local union received the monthly report and the checks, and they gave us a check for the amount of money that was put in the funds. So then we began to really grow and train some crackerjack sheet metal workers. I'm very, very proud to say that when I left there in January 1 of '89, that every officer of the Sheet Metal Workers Local 85 was one of the men that had come through the apprenticeship program. They became the first-class mechanics, and they became the officers of the local union.
Where did most of them work?
Well, we had like 23 or 24 contractors, and they worked for all of these contractors, different contractors. And then when, in construction, each job you go on is a job that you know is going to finish.
Yeah.
And so then when they would go on these jobs and that job would finish, then they'd go back to the local union to get a referral to another contractor. So they had the referral system. I handled the apprentices. And when an apprentice finished and the job, as they say, topped off, then he would come back in, and then I would place him with another contractor. The quota was one apprentice for each 4 journeymen. So I had to keep records exactly on, how many journeymen he had, if he was entitled to another apprentice, and then send the apprentices as they come in off of the jobs, to the contractor.
What happened if a contractor tried to go around you and not use union labor? Did a lot do that, or did they pretty much fall into line?
No. Once the fund was started, they knew that the only certified apprentices that they could work had to come through the office. And they served on the committees, and they knew all about. The boys attended school at night, 2 nights a week. The federal government had established the Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training. And in order for this apprentice boy to be registered and indentured with the federal government, then he had to come through the program. Now, if any inspector caught a non-union apprentice working on a job where there was federal funds, they were fined. So before I sent this apprentice out on any job, then I had a form that had to be filled out. He had to sign, we signed, and sent to the Bureau of Apprenticeship and Training. And then they sent me back a copy of it that he was registered and indentured into the apprenticeship program.
This is a neat little system, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it came about, because the contractors were allowed truck drivers and people that did not handle the metal, that they worked. But as for apprentices, also it was the responsibility of that contractor to see that that apprentice boy got all-around training, not just put him on one thing and leave him on that. The apprentices filled out a weekly report, came in, and I knew how many hours he had worked on each phase of the trade. And then I kept up with his hours, posted it to a master sheet, and when I'd see that he was getting too many hours on this and less hours on this, then I called the contractor and talked to him and say, look, he's out of balance here with his hours. He needs more time on duct work and less time on this. Can you arrange that for me? And they were all very cooperative. And they would say, yeah, or either this boy's worked too long in the shop, he needs to go back to the field, and he needs more field hours. So how about, bringing this apprentice in the field into the shop and sending this one out, But I thoroughly enjoyed.
It must have been neat seeing how the
It was,
turned out.
and you felt like you became so much a part of the apprentices too, A lot of them were right out of high school, and they were looking for a trade to learn. And and they'd work at the trade 40 hours a week, and then they would go to school 2 nights a week. Went to school for 5 hours, 10 hours a week. And then the 3rd year, we added welding. So then the 3rd year, the apprentices went to school 15 hours a week, but they had 5 hours of welding then in the 3rd and 4th year.
Did they needed to have a high school degree?
Yes. They had to be between the ages of 18 and 28, I believe it was. And if he was a veteran and he was over 28 years old. Then for each year that he had served in the service, you'd take that year off of the 28. So we had older apprentices too that was there, that were veterans.
Did you ever feel like you just had a million sons running around the place?
Yes.
Was it difficult being one of the only women? I assume there were a couple other women. Yes? No?
No. I was the only woman at that time in the apprenticeship office. In fact, I was the only one in there. Yes, and I got nicknamed Mama Ruth. And so, these young men, though, when I look at them now, and I stayed long enough to see some of their sons. And then in the local union, I have seen grandsons from the ones that was my apprentice boys coming through the programs after I went in the local union office and worked. And so I'm still invited to all the annual affairs and all, and they recently had one down at Lake Atlanta, and I could not believe there was 3 generations there, that had, the father had went through the apprenticeship program. He was one of the old, then the son had went through, and then his son was going through.
Did you find that most of the people who came through did because their fathers or grandfathers had been sheet metal workers?
A few, yes. Maybe the majority. But then you'd have other young men that were just looking for a trade to learn. And to me, a boy that's really looking for a trade to learn and came into the apprenticeship office and with that desire and all, this was like a college education. It was equivalent to that when he came out, because a lot of people that came out of college did not make the money they made. They had a rising scale first year and, first 6 months. Each 6 months they got a raise. I judged their raises by their weekly reports and their school grades. And the instructors that taught were journeyman sheet metal workers there that taught at the schools. And you put it together, and then I take it before the committee. This is, the hours he has worked on each phase of the trade. This is his school grades. This is how the instructor says he's doing in school. And then the committee would say, grant his raise, grant his raise. If a boy was not granted his raise, then I had to work with that boy and get him up to where he could get his raise. Because there was no slackers and no hangbacks, And if he said, well, I've got a problem with a contractor, then I'd say, well, then I'm going to have to replace you with that contractor if it's something like that, because you've got to keep going here. And if it was a school problem and he was having difficulty at school and didn't seem to be able to get, then I got the instructor to give him extra work, and then he came and sat in the office with me and did his extra work and got himself up to par with school where he could pass his tests and all.
Boy, I bet the kids doing homework with your kids at home was at work must have gotten old. Do any of them stand out in your mind especially?
Oh yeah, they're all special.
Yeah. Well, pick one for me.
One?
Yeah.
The one that did me most proud was the first, I'm thinking it was about 58 or 59, the international office started a national apprenticeship contest. And like I said, from 56, we were just really beginning to dig in and really get a good program going. And it might have been the early 60s. But anyhow, they started this national contest. So all over the United States, the local apprenticeships started a local contest, and in each class, now we had first year, second year, third year, and fourth year classes, and the winners from these four classes participated in the national contest. Okay. The first winner of a national contest was Tommy L. Partain. And he came in second place in the national contest. And today, Tommy is vice president of RF Knox Company. And so he was our first national winner. After then, and I don't say this boasting, but we began to have boys from Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, come to Atlanta. They wanted to go through the Atlanta apprenticeship program. And or either they'd go there and maybe the men there, say, well, look, they really have a super program in Atlanta. If you can go there and get in that program, and it'll really be worth your while. So, Tommy won the first national contest. After that, we placed or won in every national contest all through the years. Come on. I mean, just the local has, and the apprenticeship office has the pictures and over there. But I mean, we showed, and we won first place. Sometimes they had three places: first, second, and third. So then they began to take the national contest to the locals where they had the shops and their schools already built. And when we started out, our apprentices went to Smith Hughes Vocational School. They paid part of the instructor's wages, and we paid part of the instructor's wages for the sheet metal classes there. And that was down on Pryor Street down there. And we had a lot of problems and with this program there, because a lot of times, and all we could do was to tell this boy, you were to go down there and register, and you were to go in the sheet metal class, and there'd be a fee, and we'll pay the fee. And but they wanted to put everybody in there, the classes, and we didn't feel like this was right, because we were paying half of the instructor's salary, but eventually then we got our own school. So when we got enough money and built our own school, then the next big financial hurdle was the shop, because you've got to have a shop, and putting the equipment in the shop to where we could train, these boys. Well, now we have a school. Now we have the classrooms for the school for the bookwork learning. We have a huge shop, and we have a welding shop. And so, but until all of this came about, and it had to come about gradually because it was terribly expensive, now the contractor pays 12 cents an hour for each mechanic worked into the apprenticeship fund. They have a full-time coordinator and a full-time secretary, and they have 4 instructors and 4 substitute instructors. That is paid by the fund. And so it, but it had to crawl before it could stand up and walk. And, money is the key thing in training. You've got to have it to be able to do it. and with not having it and just gradually coming about. I think we went from 2 cents to 3 cents to 5 cents. And then the next jump was 8 cents. And then the next was 10 cents and then 12 cents. It may be more than that now. It really may. I don't really know what it was on the if it raised on the last contract or not. But anyhow, that's how it all came about. And it could have never been without the cooperation of the contractors and the local union. And they saw what they needed, and that was the place to start from.
Do you still stay in touch with the contractors?
A few of them, yes. A few of them I do.
And you're still volunteering here too? Yes.
Yes, I still volunteer here. I serve on a good many committees here, but I normally see the contractors at the yearly events or something, and
I bet they really miss you too.
No, it's been such a while there, because I went on into the local union office.
Was there ever any part you look back on and say, I would not live that again? Any real hard times?
No. I think the very hardest part was in '56. I think I asked a question one night. My mouth's always been my worst enemy. I asked a question one night, of the committee. I just hear shuffling papers, or are we serious about this? Are we going to have a training program? Or am I just going to sit up here and shuffle papers, and do this? And one of the contractors said, Miss Stanley, we are going to have a training program. And I said, well, now I'm going to hold you to that. When the problems comes up and the things that we're going to have to sit down and talk about and straighten out. And we're not going to go back to this. You're violating the contract, and where the local union, has the right, if they violate the contract, to pull them in off of the job and all that. We're not going to get involved in that. We are going to train apprentices and stay away from any problems that the local union and the contractors have. But if there's small problems here and they concern apprentices, then let's straighten them out. Let's don't let them get to big problems. And they assured me they were serious this time, because like I told you, it had started that month before and just deflunked out. And they had all these old records and in there that I went through, and I sent a letter to every name and address that they had in that office when I went in there, saying, come, call me, talk to me, tell me what you're doing now, if you're interested in the apprenticeship program, and everything. And just weeded out, all the ones that had left completely and denied. So then when we got down to that, I started out with about 81 names. And that's what we started classes with that year. And like I said, then we had a few problems with Smith Hughes. We had to work them out. We had to they were hard times, but I knew that if we got through it, that we'd have some. And that was the main thing, just keep plugging at it till we got it, through it, and get it established right. It was built on a good, firm foundation, is the reason that this existed as long as it has. And then we'd have problems with apprentices. There was apprentices that was thrown out of the program, apprentices that just refused to go to school, apprentices that laid out of work. And then when, a contractor would call this, and but you just remind any of them, that you will not put up with sexual harassment. And I said, if it comes about, come to me and tell me, and I'll help you. I'll go down there with you to file. And you've got to learn, but you're going to have to, it's hard, and you're going to have to be strong and have to make a stand to be able, but what you want to be is a journeyman sheet metal worker. And there's very few things that you can do that you can make as much money as you can make doing that. But till you get there and get graduated and, and everything, you may have to put up with a lot of bull from some of these sheet metal workers, But, and I'd always shame them. I would shame the men, if I knew about a particular case or something, I'd say, how would you feel if that was your wife or your daughter? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And every one of them knew that I worked with different committees in the labor movement, that I lobbied for the ERA, and that I firmly believed in women's rights. I mean, any sheet metal worker you talk to will tell you they knew where I stood there. And so I never had the problem that way.
Slap them around a little.
That's right.
Did you catch a lot of flack for your support of the ERA?
Yes, some from different people that would surprise you to the people that give you slack about it. But it's something that I don't know. It's sort of like educating people. If it's there and they can, agree and come on it and understand it and know why you want it and why you think you deserve it, and and then there's some that's gonna close their eyes and just bucket, just completely. I had a husband that was very, very understanding, and I had 2 daughters, and I used to say, I do a lot of this for you, and so.
Why do you think we lost it in Georgia?
The good old boys. At the state capitol. The good old boys. Kathy Steinberg and other women that worked so hard down there for it and everything, and it was just, to them it was a joke. To us it was very, very serious. And it just was. But Kathy Steinberg was, I just really, she just done a fabulous job, working with it and trying. That's exactly why we lost it. The good old boys team down there. They just thought it was all a joke. But eventually, it'll change. It'll take time.
It was right around there that the Coalition of Labor Union was founded, wasn't it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, sometime around that, and we started a chapter here. We had several organizational meetings trying to start a chapter here. It didn't get too far off the ground, and some of them, that petty jealousy took over, and I was one of the ones that was trying to help organize it. And till the ones that really could have put it together and got real discouraged. So finally got the chapter going a little bit, and then this little group decided they didn't want to participate, and this one didn't, so it finally just deflunked out. And well, at that time, Vicki Key, Charlie Key's wife, which was Vicki Chalkley then, and I was 2 of the officers, and the National Clue, we turned over the books, the bank account. We had like $900 in the bank. We turned over the bank account and all the books and everything to Clue. And they still say today, I'm still a member of National Clue, but they still say today, you know, if and when you want a Clue chapter, let us know, and we'll try to get one started. But the problem with Clue here in Atlanta, CWA is one of the biggest conglomerations here in the Labor Council and in the state. And they all have their own women's programs. The rest of us are very small groups, and we need the backing, and we need the people from CWA to participate in it to help make it large enough and big enough. And then the majority of the workforce in the labor movement, the office clerical, is women, and a lot of them have children. If they go to their local union meeting once a month, they go to the Atlanta Labor Council meeting once a month, you're going to put another meeting on them once a month for Clue. And it's, you know, look, I have to pay extra when I don't pick my children up at a certain time. You know, I have this, I have that. My church meet, you know, conferences on that night. This, that, and the other. And the labor movement is overloaded with meetings now, you know, and it's hard. It's real hard, and I can understand it. I know I went through it. I was picking up one child, taking one child here, you know, this, that, and the other. I mean, and especially in summertime, and you know, baseball, and I was running from this field to the other. Now, my oldest one did not care a thing about sports. My son and my youngest daughter, she was very small and petite, and she played with the Austell Angels till she was almost 19 years old, and she was supposed to age out, I think, at 15. And she was small and petite, and every now and then somebody would say, "Rachel, how old are you?" You know, something like that. And she'd laugh and just go on because she loved sports and she was going to play, you know.
The Austell Angel was 15 for 4 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, of course, up at that time, she was driving and carrying herself, you know. But I'm talking about when she was a little thing, and it was, well, you know how it is. You shuffle. You shuffle, you play shuffler, and it's
tough, yeah.
It is. It's tough.
Wasn't there a summer school for women at some point that you were involved with?
Oh, yes. I've been to several of them.
What do they do?
They take women from all different trades, all different local unions. We had classes on organizing. We had classes on officers, serving as officers of your local union. We had, it was the Southern School for Labor Women, and that's the name of it. And I'm trying to think just exactly how. I attended quite a few of them. My local union, Local 21, OPEIU, my executive board and my membership, always, it's like I told them, I said, you know, one of these days I'm going to make a bad mistake. I'm going to make a wrong decision. But I pretty well can cover the footprints I make on the floor. And I'll promise you when I do, then I'll apologize and you know, about it, and I'll try to correct it. But they supported me 100%. I never had to worry about my executive board or my membership not. But I kept my membership and my executive board informed. And when we had executive board meetings, I'd say, we got a problem, so and so and so and so. I want to know your ideas on it. How do you think we can handle this and take care of it? But I negotiated many a night and weekends for 21 contracts. because, see, I worked at sheet metal. Then we came about one day, and the business manager said, you know, we need somebody in here at 7:30 in the morning. And to give out referrals to men that's going to jobs at 8 and 8:30, so forth and so on. All this came about. Then we only had 2 business reps and 1 business manager in the office, and 2 girls. And so, and I said, I'll take the early shift. But I said, now when I walk out of here at 3:30, I don't want to see any long faces. I don't want anybody to hand me a letter at 3:20 and say, Ruth, this has got to go tonight, or anything else. I said, because I'm going to work my schedule that I'm going to be off from work at 3:30 unless there is a dire emergency. And because this is normal. I mean, in an office, the phone will ring at 3:30. You get tied up on it, and the boss has been out all day, and he comes in, and he's not going to be there tomorrow, and he wants to give you all this that he wants done tomorrow. So I said, but we've got to have an understanding, to it. But I'd never schedule a meeting before 4:30 or 5 o'clock, just in case that happened, But I started coming in at 7:30, and I worked 7:30 to 3:30. So then that gave me more time, to get out of there and to go to my meetings that I set up for negotiations at night.
Were you married at the time?
Oh, yes. I had 3 children.
Oh, well, I know you had the 3 children.
Oh, yes.
I was wondering if you were a single mom or not.
No. I had a wonderful husband, and we would have been married 40 years. He died in 1990. He died on May the 24th of 1990. And if he had lived to October the 14th, we would have been married 40 years.
It sounds like it must have been a wonderful husband.
It was. We had a really wonderful relationship. And so, and he was just as helpful as he could be. I was working when we married, and worked on until my first child was born. And when my first child was born in July 48, I stopped working, and I didn't work for 5 years. And in those 5 years, I had all 3 of my children. I had 1 in 48, and 1 in 51, and 1 in 53. And so I stayed at home then, after she was born in 53, until I went to work. Like I told you, I did some part-time work in 54 and 55, But then when I went to work 3 days a week in 56 for the sheet metal work. And so...
Did your husband support you going back to work?
Not really, not at first. And when I said that I want to, and no, there's no way, with these 3 children, and I said, but I need a break, and from this, and I just want to go work a week, and so then that became acceptable, just a week now and then, and so at that time, he was employed by the city of Atlanta in the sanitary department, and he was a member of the municipal, state, county, and city employees local union. And so and then when the apprenticeship office came about, and the 3 days a week, and I'll only be gone 3 days a week, and then I can keep up with everything else, because I participated in PTA and everything, with the children, and the scouts, and so then I talked that into being acceptable. But it was when then when it went from 3 days to 5 days, he was really disgruntled about that for a little while. And so then he began to accept that because he saw that I wanted it so bad. And it was just a real challenge to me, to make something out of it, do something with it, and help these boys. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed. I never worked at a job. Now, local union work is fine, and I wouldn't give anything for, going into the local and everything and working. But local union work is mostly routine. Except, where you handle the referrals, that's a little bit different because you have direct contact one-on-one. I liked that. And but the rest of it is just mostly routine. And but the apprenticeship, that 13 years in the apprenticeship office was just most all of it was one-on-one. And then somebody'd say to me, that boy will never make it. You will never walk him through this. And I said, you just wait and see. I mean, it was just a challenge, And lots of times, I just have to get real strict and ugly with them, and everything about what was going to happen if they didn't do so and so. But I never did that to a boy that on graduation night he didn't hug my neck and say thanks. So, and so many of our people that come out of high school now, that is, or then, not now, but then too, that they weren't ready to go to college. They weren't ready. They didn't know what they wanted. And when I ran across one of these that I saw that this was not for him, I told him, you need to go look for some other trade, or you need to go back to school, and get you some more education, because this is not for you. And they as many as went through, because we always averaged about 100 apprentices all the time. We had them in there. And then you had your boys that came in. The first day you got them, after they were interviewed by the committee, accepted, you got them all signed up. You never saw anything but the paperwork on them, for maybe a year or two. Maybe when they went down to pay their dues in the local, they'd drop by the office, and see you a minute. Never a moment's trouble or anything. Just right on through it, no problem. And then you had your others that you were just constantly working with, trying to get through and trying to help.
Who helped you?
You mean in the program?
Who was a mentor for you? Who said, let me give you a hand here? I got you stymied on this one.
Yeah, you have. You really have. I don't know. I really don't. I really don't know, because at the time, even at OPEIU meetings and all, none of the other women seemed to know or understand, because all their jobs was so different from mine. And I would venture to say maybe IBEW 613 had a strong apprenticeship program. But there wasn't many other local unions at that time that had strong apprenticeship programs. And, and I've had a lot of them tell me, I wouldn't work with that bunch of teenagers, and things like that. And I said, oh, but it's so rewarding. I mean, when with them and when you help them and No, I wouldn't like that. I know. But then the iron workers and the carpenters and, all of them began to establish their programs about that time. And they were trying to get them off of the ground too and get them, working. And I've had a lot of different local unions call me and say, look, Miss Ruth, I know you know this. Tell me how to go about doing this, I said, all right. And I've tried to help, others. But as for my mentor at that time, I don't really know, because when I went into the local union office, Roy Norton was the business manager, and he had served as chairman of the apprenticeship committee. And the International was at a push to put a coordinator, a sheet metal coordinator, over each apprenticeship program. And Roy came to me and sat down and told me this. And he said, now, if you want to keep this job and stay in here, in the apprenticeship office, we'll see that you do. But I'm just telling you what the trend, the International is setting the trend, and then later on when I talked to some of the International men and they said, we had no idea you would leave from in there. We thought that you would stay on and then let a coordinator come in, and then this coordinator would check the apprentices on the job sites and things like that, which then a woman didn't do, And I've looked back at it now, and that was one of the reasons that they had to have a coordinator. I was a woman. They needed a man. And and the coordinator that they selected was one of my former apprentice boys. And he begged me to stay, And I said, Bill, I don't think it'll work. I said, I've run this office. I've made the decisions. And I've been very fortunate that the committee has never come down on me, about a decision that I made, anything with an apprentice in it. And I would, the first time you did something, I'd say, now Bill, I done it so-and-so and so-and-so and it worked, And I said, no. And Roy wants me to come in the local union office. So the lady in there was leaving. And so I said, I think it'd be better, if I left and went in there. And so I did. And I went in there. But, and then he hired a secretary in there. So it
must have killed him actually when you left.
It really worked out. I wasn't that far because the apprenticeship office has always been close to the local union office. But Bill would come down and say, "What about this?" and everything, and we'd talk and discuss it, and But then I went on in the local union office there.
Why did you finally retire from there?
My husband's health had begun. He had retired several years before. He had retired, I believe, 86, and his health started really downhill. And and we saw this, and 32 and a half years is long enough. And I had, once before I had set a date, and we hired 3 different women, and I trained the first one about 3 weeks, and it just wasn't there. That was not what she needed to do. So then we hired the second one, and then she left of her own accord in a couple of weeks. So then we hired the third one, and she worked out. And so, but I went in and I told Mike Cannon, I worked under 6 different business managers Roy Norton was the first one, but I worked under 6 different ones. And Mike Cannon was the last one, and now he's on the international staff of the sheet metal. He's an international representative. And I went in and I told Mike, and I said, now Mike, you know we've kind of had a problem, in here, and I'm going to give you 1 year's notice. I am retiring January 1 of 1989. And I said, there's not going to be any backups or any changing it. That's it. I'm leaving then. Jake's health is, failing him, and I want to be able to be there. So I said, now that's the way it's going to be. And he said, all right, then you hire your replacement. And like I said, I went through 3 then, and the third one I saw she was, going to work out good. That was just fine. Okay, I retired from there January the 1st of 89. Then I still was president of OPEIU. So we had this office over here. So I told the executive board, I said, I'll finish out this term of office. And then I'm going to retire as president of OPEIU. And I'll come in, I'll take care of all the negotiations and try to keep up, with the members in that. We have the Secretary of Treasury. Now, she works in the sheet metal office, Jan Brown. And, but I'll come in the office when necessary. And I said, I'll try to spend 1 day a week in the office and take care of all the phone calls. But we had a recorder on, and I'd call every day and pick up the calls off of the recorder and answer them, But I set appointments up, for that 1 day when I'd be in there. And then this was wonderful. I did negotiations in the daytime. And so then I kept up with all the contracts, did my negotiations in the daytime, set up my meetings and done them. But I didn't spend all that much time in the office in here. And and then when my term was up, I retired from there.
I hope you told him to give you a heck of a party. I want a party to it. If you could pick 1 minute or one episode and relive it, can you think of one that you'd like to relive? You're allowed to pick more than one, but...
Now you're talking about with 21 OPEIU?
Either way.
There would be so many that when I would be so high when I had completed a hard contract and when we walked out and it was settled, then you couldn't even pull me down off the clouds. I'd just be so thrilled and so tickled, and especially if it had been a real hard one and we had gotten down to that. I've had so many highs out of that in negotiations. And the highs that came out of the apprenticeship program and all was usually on graduation night. When I would meet the fiancés, the mothers, and always theirs was, thank you so much for what you done.
Yeah.
That would be the highest.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I was appointed by Herb Mabry as chairman of the Credential Committee, which I served 5 or 6 conventions. I can't remember which, to tell you the truth. I first served on the committee, and then I served as chairman of this committee, and it was the committee. Naturally, all the credentials are presented at the convention in October. And
what does that mean? I don't understand.
All right. My committee go in at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Convention started on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. Everybody had to bring their credentials in. And they were either pre-registered or not registered. They had to come in and be registered and receive their bag of goodies and everything, and get their badges and all. This way it gives you got to meet and know everybody all over the state. And so especially all the delegates, coming to the convention every year. Went through quite a few elections and sweated them out and all, but it was just one of the things that I really enjoyed. And so in the credential.
Do you think union people are more fun than other people? I already know they're more interesting. Was there something special about union people?
There's a brotherly love there that is developed among quite a few of them, and that is usually the ones that are not in there for self. They're the ones that donate their time and energy and all for the labor movement. And other people sometimes have a hard time understanding this, but I participate in all the demonstrations now. For CWA, we've been, they've been having demonstrations on the AT&T contract. I participated in them. Still do. Probably always will, as long as I can go. And Labor Council demonstrations, I participated in them.
Were you in that very recent one?
No, not.
Okay.
I was not. I was out of town doing something else when that one was there. But I would have been there if I hadn't been. And and I work for Ben Jones, and I work in a lot of political campaigns, and it's all donated. I mean, it's hours of work that I do because I want to do it. And the one thing you didn't ask me about, I wanted you to ask me about, was my salary with the OPEIU.
What about it?
I got $100 a month expense allowance. Was a small local union and could not. The Secretary of Treasury receives $80 a month, and I received $100 a month.
It had to be a labor of love.
That's what people don't understand. I mean, but they would pay for my gas and oil, and especially when I'd be going to the Teamsters to negotiate, or way out with a machinist, or firemen and oilers, and Nick Bonanno's International Lady Garment Workers, way out that way, somewhere. And so, but that's what the salary always was, $100 a month. But in that position, it also leads to other things that brought about me serving, like as chairman of the arrangement committee for the labor awards and committee, and also for different things that I've served on committees. And I want to keep my hand in. I just don't want the responsibility that I had.
Yeah.
See, but I don't think you can stay around anything as long as I've stayed around the labor movement and been part of it, and not be interested in everything that goes on in it. I attend the Atlanta Labor Council meeting as a guest now, not as a delegate. But my friends and all are here, and and I'm interested in them and how they are and what's going on with them, and same way like I am with sheet metal. And yet it's not that I don't have anything else to do. I belong to the Cobb County Democratic Women's Association, and I work actively in it.
You'd have to in Cobb County.
And I belong to the Cobb County Democratic Committee. And and I attended the National Convention of Democrats. And Joe and I have a lot of common ground there, see, because he's president of Fulton County. And it's not I don't have anything else to do. It's that this just, this is one of my first priorities. And it's like I've always told her, maybe, you know, if you need me or anything, you call me. And whatever I got on schedule, I'll change. But now I'm affiliated with the union supplier. And Glenda Caldwell owns the company, and it's promotional items, So I still talk to everybody in the, you know, in the local union offices. They buy their T-shirts and their caps and all that, you know. And so, and we sell nothing that's not made in the United States, and nothing that's not union made. That's the policy. Last week, no, excuse me, I was in Daytona last week. Week before last, on Thursday, I was in Georgetown, South Carolina, and had went over there. They had wanted us to, Glenda and I, wanted us to come over there on some promotional items that they wanted, and shirts and everything, and so, with the steel workers. And we went over, and they treat us like royalty. And first steel plant I've ever been through in my life, went all the way through the steel plant. They showed us it. Then the executive board of the local union over there took us out to dinner that night, and with their with their spouses, and we just had a marvelous time. And I've never been to Georgetown, South Carolina before, because I mean, it's one place you don't go through going somewhere else. You either go in there or you know you don't. And so, but it's only what, I think the guy told me 31 miles to Myrtle Beach. I've been to Myrtle Beach lots of times, but I've never been to Georgetown, you know. But we just thoroughly enjoyed it. Did a whale of a business. And the company was so nice. They came over. We had a meeting that morning on what they wanted to give to the employees. And, yeah. And they have a, let me see now, let me tell this right, 4-cent checkoff now on promotional items, and they're one of the ones that is, can't even think the word of it now, but it's power. CWA is using it too, but it's where management and labor agrees, and they appoint these committees, a committee for each department. And this department is supposed to give workers a voice in changes and how production could be better, and all this. What is the other word? Something power.
Empowerment?
Empowerment. I was sitting here, couldn't think of it to save my life. Got a huge order for shirts with empowerment, you know, and all that the company is paying for them. They're sponsoring a golf club. They want tees, they want golf balls, and things like that. But on the tees, they want United Steelworkers of America, you know, local so-and-so put on it. And
as long as I get the company's names on the balls, then you're okay.
We just had a fantastic trip over there. And it was so enjoyable. And then instead of going strictly local union shirts now, we want the empowerment, and they have had the artists draw up just what they wanted and everything on that, and then they're going to put United Steelworkers over. And well, I'd like to have caps. A lot of them have to bring, a lot of them wanted duffel bags, you know, different things where they could change their clothes because they have to shower and all, and so I said, okay. So then after we went through the plant, talked with the members off of the plant, and came back and sat down with representatives from the local and representatives from the company. Okay, this is what your people say they want. You know, and then what do you agree on? And set with them, and then it's okay. We'll buy so many caps. We'll buy so many shirts. You know, and
This is an astounding change for the labor movement, isn't it?
it is. And see, that's what amazes me so. And Glenda has not ever worked in the labor movement before, you know, anything. And she looks at me and don't know how I get these highs, you know, out of it. I mean, you know, I said, you know, 20 years ago this would have been unheard of. You know, I mean, the company would have done what they wanted to do. They didn't give a damn whether the local liked it or not. The local would have done what they wanted to do, and to hell with the company. You know, but I said they're together. They're working together on this empowerment, you know. And so happened it was the day of the retirement meeting for that local union, and the international guy that's hired of the retirees for the steel workers, he was in there. Of course, he didn't think much of empowerment, you know. And I said, look, our age, and I didn't want to tell him, you're one of the old ones just like me, but our age, this is good. This is not bad. This is good. This is really what we have worked for and wanted. It's a say-so in the changes. And you know, if they want to call it empowerment, you know, good. But we're going to be part of that empowerment. I mean, it's not going to be just the contract, and we're going to have to go right by the contract. Nah, it's just a company tactic. I said, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I said, you know, if it had been that, they wouldn't have asked them to sit in on the committee.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a chance to stand up and talk to the people, young people in the labor movement now, what advice would you give them? You're not going to get the chance, but if you had the chance, what would you say to them?
Be active in your local union. Don't depend on somebody else to call them the next day and say, what went on at the local union meeting last night? Be active in your local union. If there's changes needs to be made in your local union, if it's not right, or you don't feel that it's right, express your views on that and participate in your local union. Be a part of it. Don't say, I don't like so-and-so and she did so-and-so and I'm not going back. You know, participate in it. Be a part of it. If changes need to be made, be part of the change making.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.